Hello and welcome to another recording of Invincible You. Our guest today was the lovely Alex Still, a 19-year-old who is at university. During this recording we talk about mental health, the stigma around mental health, the mental health that affects our young people in universities today. During the podcast we talk about what Alex might like to see in place and what is in place to help these young people. It's an area that I'm really passionate about. You know, we have to remember that these young people that are at university are the future of this country. So it's so important that we take care of them and that we prioritise their mental health. And I'm not entirely convinced that's still happening. Please listen to the recording because it's fascinating and Alex is just brilliant. Okay, so enjoy. Share with anybody you think might also enjoy it. Take care. So we have the guest in the studio. We have Alex Still. Welcome, Alex. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Full disclosure, you are a family member. I have to get that out there straight away. You are the nephew of my partner, are you not?
I am indeed, yes.
Guilty as charged. Alex, for the listener, just give them a little bit of an intro as to who you are and what you're up to right
now. My name's Alex. I am currently in my second year studying history at Brasenose College, Oxford. I'm in the middle of sort of revising for my upcoming exams. So I'm a little bit stressed out, but just trying to enjoy life. I'm going camping with my brother this week. So that's where I'm at.
Perfect. Okay, let's go straight into this because you've said the key word straight away. A little bit stressed because you have exams coming up. How old are you now?
I'm 19.
19. Okay, so tell me, as a 19-year-old who's a little bit stressed over exams, would you know how to handle that stress, how to manage it?
I think over the years and doing various exams, I've developed certain techniques for handling the stress that comes along with doing exams. I've developed a technique regarding deep breathing. It's always good to try and control your heart rate in fictitious situations. And I think physical exercise is certainly a technique which I've come to embrace increasingly, especially at university, because I think it offers such an opportunity to escape the rigors and the burdens of sort of getting stuck in books and getting stuck indoors. So I do think that over time and as a 19-year-old, I've got an okay grounding in handling exam stress at this point. But that doesn't mean that it's easy. There are certainly a lot of problems which present themselves frequently. But yes, I've got certain techniques which I've developed which help me with that.
I'm just writing down that word so as I know to go back to it. You'll be pleased I'm writing down the word problems because we're going to go back there. So
fantastic.
Yay! Thank you for that. I'm really curious. So firstly, deep breathing it's brilliant. I mean, it's the one thing that we all have at hand just to be able to control our own system, to regulate is the word that I use. How for you did you tap into that? Where did you learn that? How did you understand that managing your own system was the way forward?
It's really a process of trial and error. I think everyone has their own techniques, and for me, I just came to find that deep breathing and regulating, as you say, worked for me. Some people, I imagine, it doesn't. My mum was a big inspiration. I mean, she was the one who first introduced me to it because she obviously has her own sort of stresses, work-related stresses. So I've just come to embrace them and try and orientate them to my own liking and to where I'm personally comfortable using them.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And the other thing you said was also exercise, which of course is just we need some sort of, you've within 5 minutes of recording, you've nailed the two things that I say to people all the time, that every day we need a level of stillness, so silence. The mind needs a level of silence every day, or a period of silence, and you get that by deep breathing. And the body needs movement every day. It needs some sort of movement, even if that's a 20-minute walk outside. It needs some sort of movement, and straight away you've learned that. So some of that's come from mum. I'm kind of interested in university and how university helped you, not university, the university helped you at all with managing stress and anxiety, given that it is a stressful time for a lot of young people?
I certainly think that my university, from personal experience, could do more in that regard. I think there are aspects of university life, just being a student, which have created an environment where I'm learning new techniques and new methods, meeting new people who have sort of so many new ideas, novel ideas to introduce. As a student, you're constantly meeting new people through clubs and societies.
Yeah.
And as you get to know them, they sort of impart their wisdom, if you will, their own ideas and methods as to how to tackle stress. And I think that's such a beautiful environment, because it helps you to sort of innovate and also change up the monotony. Because I think deep breathing's fine in and of itself, but when you're doing that over and over again, I think it can become somewhat tired and repetitive, and I think a lot of people get bored, especially when the stress is still mounting and you don't think it's working. So being in an environment like university, where you've got all those sort of fresh ideas spinning around, I think is a fantastic opportunity for students, and especially me in my own experience.
So it feels like there's a lot of peer support taking place. So kind of students sharing stories and going down that, which is brilliant. If you got your way, what would you see the university or universities in general do more of? What would you like to see them do?
It's fantastic that we're seeing new drives among universities to try and destigmatize mental health and student stress. I think a lot of them, especially with the coronavirus pandemic, have explored ways of easing the pressures of being able to work being unable to attend university in person. But I do think there's more things that they can work on. I think universities, and especially individual professors and tutors, they're professionalized, professional academics, but I think increasingly they can take on a more sort of paternal, maternal role and help students in a more personal way. Sort of marrying the academia with the human side, and appreciating that university isn't just about studying and revising, which so many institutions seem to prioritize these days, and actually appreciating that we all struggle, professors included, and that if we're communicating more, we can help each other tackle those. So I think that's potentially an area which I'd like to see improved a bit, student staff communication.
I love that, and I love the use of the words there, paternal and maternal. It just feels like such a really beautiful idea that a professor would be able to develop a more maternal side. Do you think it's possible that could happen?
It's interesting, because we're sort of indoctrinated into this idea that there's a dichotomy between staff and students, and I think that's ingrained in us through sort of primary, secondary school and sixth form. But at university, I think there is a drive towards breaking down those barriers and almost treating each other in kind of with greater respect, certainly, but also almost as friends. I have friends who, sorry, there are some pigeons on the roof. I have some friends who have since gone on to do doctorates and things, and have actually become really close with their former professors. They'll go out to the pubs with them, and have developed these really close bonds, because I think in these stressful environments, the students and staff are forced together to create those bonds of trust.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends who have struggled with mental health have used the tutors as a way of venting.
Yeah.
And I think through that experience and that process of building trust, you can certainly break down those barriers between students and their teachers.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Do you find that there are some lecturers, professors that maybe naturally lend themselves more to those roles than others?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of professors are professors, which makes sense, but a lot of them, I think, neglect the as we were saying earlier, the maternal, the paternal side,
yeah.
and those responsibilities that come along with educating the next generation of young people.
Yeah.
I've had mixed experience with my own teachers, my own tutors. Many of them have been very warm and very accommodating, to the point that in any other situation they'd probably be my friends. And there are others who are, I think, a lot stricter and a lot sterner, and certainly aren't as warm or inviting, potentially.
It was, I had to admit, it was kind of an unfair question, because the truth is, in life, there are people that lend themselves more to being more empathic or being more maternal than there are other people, and that is through all walks of life. It's not just about professors or lecturers. That's pretty much life. There will be people that you come across that just never, that are very, very academic, and we have like our academia, and then we have our emotional intelligence, and it doesn't matter how far up the ranking you are in terms of academia, you could have the lowest kind of emotional awareness and intelligence as is possible. In fact, some people, you quite often find that the higher somebody goes up the academic ladder, it's almost like they forget the other one. Because they're so far climbing this one, that the other one they just forget, or
Definitely.
They don't see that it's necessary, that they might need it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem in all walks of life. I think the idea that you prioritize material success and accolades to the exclusion and the detriment of those things which ultimately bring us sort of the greatest emotional well-being.
Yeah.
And I think that's very prevalent. So good point.
And the truth is, if we don't have a level of emotional awareness, then we can't then appreciate some of the beauty that is around us, because we're unable to kind of tap into that. So again, I could be a CEO of a multi-million-pound business, but if I don't have a level of emotional awareness, then I could sit on the most stunning beach in the world and not appreciate it. So we kind of need that, don't we?
Yeah, and I think it's always comforting in a weird way to know that intellectual maturity doesn't equate to emotional maturity, and that you might respect someone and look up to them in one way, but in fact they haven't quite mastered everything. That there's always something to work on, and that there's always sort of an emotional side to aspire to, which in many ways is more important than kind of exams and all those sort of petty things that we get stressed about.
Yeah, it's those goal-orientated things in life. I always remember it. I think it was about last year, the year before, there was a post on LinkedIn, and it was this guy he was talking about an interaction that he'd had with his daughter, and how he had taught her a model, and it was a model of learning of, I don't know what it was. But it certainly wasn't emotional. There was nothing emotional in it at all. And he was really proud of her because she picked up this model and she was running with it. And this outpouring of people going, "Oh my God, that's amazing. What a great dad. And can't believe you're pushing her like that and driving her forward." And there was just this outpouring. And I went in and said, "That's really amazing. I love that. I love that you're doing that. But please be aware that she also has an emotional side. And her emotional awareness is also really, really important. what fascinated me about the post was he responded to every other person, and he didn't respond to me.
Really?
I was like, you can't hear it, can you? You literally can't hear that, because I'm the only person that has stepped in and went, please be aware of her emotional needs. It's good that you can coach her in that way. It's good that you can drive her in that way, but where are her emotional needs? And there was no response at all. I was like, that says everything, really.
Yeah. Well, I think that's building on that point. I think there's a huge, as much as society today prides itself on being more aware about mental health and sort of prioritizing our emotional well-being, I think a lot of people are almost cheapskate in that regard. They'll sort of profess to embracing that, and then when push comes to shove, I think they'll neglect that and ignore it. And I think that's definitely something which sucks.
Yeah. There's a lot of tick boxing taking place right now, and a lot of piecemeal taking place where people think that they are engaging in it, and actually they're not. In terms of your place of study, what do you have in place?
Institutionally, as in sort of what have the universities put in place to help us with that? Well, we have certainly got some support. The chaplains, so Oxford is a very religious university, and a lot of the chaplains, especially for religious people, offer incredible amounts of support. But that's obviously very devotional, very religious, and I think there's other aspects of mental health which for a lot of students who aren't religious is somewhat inaccessible, I think. And outside of that, the university doesn't really have any pre-existing sort of instruments for helping us tackle that. We often outsource to third parties, and I think that often creates a lot of problems for students because they have to travel outside of the city occasionally to access those facilities and those resources, which is very unfair, especially for those students who are really struggling with time management and stress, the two of them being very sort of interlinked. And so sort of burdening them with having to go out of their way to go to clinics and mental health practitioners outside of the university, I think is very unfair. So I think there are certainly aspects which work for some students, but it's not a universal experience, and often is the case that it's very difficult for a lot of students, especially where I am, to access the materials that they so desperately need.
At their fingertips, like you say, because we have a group of young people there that are very, very stressed because you're trying to learn and grow and do all of these achievements, and then somebody goes, I'm feeling a little bit stressed. Well, if you could just go that way, please, and catch a couple of buses, and then there's a clinic over there that you can go to. It's why, in my head, I'm like, why is that not in-house? There has to be rooms somewhere in a university the size of that university where they could set up shop a couple of days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
And what we were mentioning earlier about students being sort of these staff being these pastoral heads, but often it's the case that they have such inadequate training. There's no resources in place for staff and tutors and teachers to sort of educate themselves in the proper ways of approaching people who are really struggling. And so there's always, while they might encourage you to, go and speak to your tutor or your pastoral head, there's always a sense of, well, you don't necessarily understand fully what's going on here. You're not properly equipped, professionally, certainly, to understand exactly what's going on, and certainly to diagnose me. And I think that's certainly something that you've picked up on just there is absolutely right.
I think having a conversation like that, I'm doing some training with our local council at the minute, and it's training around having difficult conversations around mental health and well-being. And it's not a big piece of training, but it has elements to it. And it's all about frame reference and what is empathy and appropriate questioning. And it's just training the managers to a point where they can have those conversations that aren't easy. Because if you have somebody stood in front of you that is anxious, worried, blubbering, depressed, that they've disengaged from the world around them, all of those things, a regular human being just would not be genned up to handle that. You know what I mean? And the training that I'm doing with the council is really it's simplistic in its delivery, but I hope that it will be enough to be able to go, okay, so I can handle this. And we're just developing a traffic light kind of referral system, like a red, amber, green. And the green would be, we're going to refer you to local resources, things on the internet, different things that you can kind of self-learn. And the red, obviously, is we're going to refer you to either a counsellor or a therapist or something like that. We're going to have referral routes. But for professors and people in-house to be able to have those conversations, it's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, I think personally we're so ill-equipped to deal with problems which we can't relate to. There are a lot of students at Oxford who have eating disorders, who feel suicidal, as not to get too sort of depressing about this tonally, but I think when you're confronted with those situations, those conversations, you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And often what comes to mind is reassurance and putting your hand on their shoulder, but often, as is the case, that's not enough. And so I think your the traffic light system with your local council and everything like that is definitely something that should be incorporated. In fact, I might petition my college's JCR to look into that.
The training that I'm delivering, I think it's 5 hours long in its totality, and all it does is really it gens people up to that point where they could have those conversations and know what to do. Because although I got the sense then that when you said those two things, like the eating disorders and the kind of suicide, that's life. That is part of life, and we can't shy away from words like that because that is what's happening. And particularly in young people, and particularly in and I have to say this in young men particularly, because that's always where the highest suicide rates are. And we can't shy away from those conversations. But for somebody to step forward and start talking to a professor about eating disorders, or even not, just kind of talking around it, but then at what point does the professor go, oh my goodness, this is an eating disorder. This is out of my remit, but I recognize what it is, and this is what I have to do with it. There has to be some sort of recognition there, or some sort of training to kind of get them to that point.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. They don't have adequate training, and the unfortunate truth of the fact is that students are responsible for it. You see that in Oxford, because I can only really speak for that personal experience, our colleges have student JCRs like many other universities, and we're responsible for coming up with ideas and lobbying the college to enact those ideas and to provide funding and to institutionalize some of our policies. And so now there's a big drive to try and educate professors and to get them the proper training, but that's only come from students. Yeah. And there's been a lot of bureaucracy involved in that. It's a very laborious process trying to mediate between college heads who are more interested in ensuring that next year we've got enough money coming in, or our sports facilities are up to scratch, but we don't seem to prioritize that. And unfortunately the burden's placed on students to come up with those ideas, to make sure they're implemented, and to take the lead, which students should not be doing when they've got other things to do, like revise.
Absolutely. Oh, what was in my head then? Oh yeah, it always blows my mind. Whenever I look at the student world, it always blows my mind that universities can't see the link between, if we have healthier, more content, more peaceful students, then their grades will go up. Their grades will be better. And I'm like, do you not see the link there? You're ignoring something there that is so powerful. And you're over here looking at your results and results as money and all of that. Pull it back and go back to mental health. Start delivering really, really solid, sound mental health, and all of a sudden your grades will go up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same goes for just genuine attendance. We were talking before we started about people in their academic journeys and their journeys in life and getting to a point at university where they can't carry on and they have to drop out. And I have encountered that in the short time that I've been at university. People in my sort of circles have got to the point where they just can't cope with it and they've had to drop out, which never does any good for the student, let alone the college's statistics in terms of attendance.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got 2 people out of 100 dropping out, then there's something going wrong there. And I think you're absolutely right. If the college and if universities start to embrace these methods of improving grades through really productive kind of mental well-being policies, then that can really marry well with the academic focus, which is all too kind of predominant these days.
Yeah. The academic success is really powerful, and I don't want to ignore that at all, because that's why people go to university. But there is definitely something missing. And what I always think about stuff like this is I don't think they understand how little it would take in terms of running workshops for the students. Firstly, in terms of, so we're going to run a workshop on how you regulate your system. Let's do a little bit of psychoeducation on how your mind works, some basics, and then we're going to teach you how to regulate your system. But then also on the other side, teaching some of the professors or the kind of key people in universities how to have those difficult conversations. A lot of workplaces now have mental health first aiders, which I'm kind of a little bit edgy about, because again, it feels like a pop of training that happens and then they have to go away and just have these difficult conversations. I insist with mental health first aiders that they continue to have supervision and continue to have CPD about 3 times a year. That would be my standard for that. But it's not everybody's standard. But it would cost so little for universities to put that on. But for me, their results would be massive, absolutely massive.
Absolutely. And I think if you can sort of institutionalize it to the point that the professors themselves are adequately trained to train other professors and other members of the faculties and things, then not only are you cutting down on costs, which seems to be, you know, the key focus in a lot of universities thinking, but you're also ensuring that you don't have to outsource, that you don't have to go out of your way to bring people in. And as you said, the problem of having to get people to recurrently come back in. I think if you internalize it, I think that's doubly powerful.
Well, absolutely, because it doesn't feel like it's a service that's across there. When a service is across there, it doesn't feel like it's a part of the fabric of the university. Whereas, I don't know, there's something way more powerful and comforting when somebody goes, "Oh, there's Joe down the corridor. Why don't you book an appointment with Joe? And Joe's lovely, and a lot of people have seen Joe." And do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to ask a question. I have no idea what the answer might be. Would you have in university? Would you have on-site counsellors or therapists that you could just access?
So a lot of universities do that. At Oxford, it's often college-based. As far as I'm aware, in fact, I'm not even sure if we have an on-site mental health therapist or just someone to help. I know we have the chaplain, but the chaplain service is ultimately to the chapel, not to mental health. And the fact that I don't even know, my ignorance about it is testament to the fact that there's not enough understanding about that. And as you were saying, that kind of intangible feeling of comfort and warmth, that that there are people there next to you to support you. And we don't have that. We don't have the knowledge or the feeling.
Yeah. We were talking earlier before we started recording about that there are services there, but they're outsourced, so they're not within the university grounds. And I forgot where I was going with this.
We'll figure it out.
Where was I going with that? Oh, and the disconnect. We were talking about the disconnect. And again, because it feels like it's something across there that it doesn't, I don't know, for me, it just doesn't sit right that it's not in university. It's like, I'll go over there. They'll help you. They'll sort you out. It's not strong
Yeah.
enough. It's not comforting enough.
No. And I think also the problem with a lot of older universities is that change comes slower to those who have inherited traditions
Yes.
and those kind of psychological traditions of, well, I'm here, I'm at such and such a place, and we have sort of we've always had a certain way of going about things.
Yeah.
And I don't think my university is nearly the most sort of revolutionary or adaptive university in the UK. It's probably one of the slowest. And I think so the opportunities afforded for students where I am potentially are weaker than in other places which are far more on the ball,
Yes.
if you get what I mean.
There was a phrase that popped into my head then. It was resting on one's laurels.
Yeah.
Just in terms of name, it's like, when there's a name there, and this can happen in a restaurant, or it can happen with a clothing brand, or many different areas. But if there's a name there, sometimes people forget that they have to develop and grow. Whereas you get a newer university, and they try really, really hard to get themselves
Absolutely.
at the league table, and they start bringing in loads of innovation and different ways of doing things. But my guess is, and this is a wild guess, that places like Oxford and Cambridge and some of those really big names will rest on their laurels just a little bit more.
They will, definitely. And you see that not only in mental health, but in so much, statistics and things like that. Because I think there's an expectation, a lot of students across universities, which is, well, you're going to university now, you should have attained this sort of level of achievement, this level of maturity, that you should be used to the stresses of and the tribulations of being a student and doing the exams to get here. You're already equipped. You don't need our help. And I think definitely Oxford and Cambridge lean far more into that than a lot of universities, which are far more adaptive.
Yeah. You mentioned the word stigma earlier, and it feels like a lot of my life has been spent fighting the stigma against mental health. What sort of stigma do you experience at university?
I think and again, this is very much a personal thing, because everyone will have a different level of confidence or a different level of openness. I find that for me personally, there's a bit of stigma regarding sort of just generally feeling low. I know a lot of people have some really strong friendships and trust circles where they feel like it's okay to reach out.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a very, if I may, a gendered aspect to this. I think a lot of men, young men, are brought up with these preconceptions of, well, potentially it's not manly or it's unbecoming to talk about your feelings, or when you're feeling sad, show any emotion. And I think at university, at that time when a lot of people are leaving puberty and there's lots of competition, and you're all trying to show off and mature simultaneously, I think a lot of people try and suppress all of those kind of anxieties about sort of fitting in, and belie who they are and what they're feeling.
It's really interesting because I, as somebody that's just a little bit older than you, I might have don't laugh. I might have assumed that your generation might have been better with mental health, because in general we are getting better as a nation. We are definitely getting better. We're definitely talking about it more. There's more and more things on TV, and there's more conversations taking place. So it's almost saddening to hear that there is still stigma around. But I guess it's going to take years and years to clear that completely, to the point when, this is the point that I would like to see it, where having having mental health issues is viewed the same as having a bad leg. Exactly the same. There is no difference between having a bad leg and something happening in your head.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to sort of preference that these are my personal kind of interpretations, and for a lot of people, they're doing a fantastic job, a far better job than me of tackling those and personally working through them.
Yeah.
I think stigma is subjective, and everyone will have their own stigmas, and everyone will have their own limit. But I think you've hit the nail on the head on that point, in the sense that it's far easier to diagnose a physical injury as opposed to a psychological sort of torment, which potentially not even the person struggling with that understands themselves. And so I think there's always been this game of catch up between the mental health side of healthcare and physical sort of ailments, if you will.
Absolutely. I always compare therapy as against going to the dentist. If I'm working with somebody in here and they kind of come to the end of their journey in that moment, I always say to them, the analogy I use is, I want people to use this service in the same way that people use a dentist. I want them to pop in when something's not right. And if we have to go through a set of treatment, then that's what we have to go through. But sometimes they might just need to pop in once, we do their work, and off they go. But I want to see the same kind of attitude used towards both services. Because we go, I know we don't like going to dentists in general, but we go to a dentist usually without any issue whatsoever. But going to see a therapist, there's still this huge stigma. And I still have people sat in front of me going, I can't believe I'm here and I feel so stupid, and why couldn't I handle this? And you hear the same script going over and over again. No, and in my head then I was like, is it normally older people that say, and it's like, it's not. It can be younger people as well that are still saying the same things. Why am I here? And there's something wrong with me. And I'm like, no, you're just overwhelmed right now. I met somebody this morning for the first time, and I can't say too much, but there was a journey. And as soon as this person told me the journey, and I went, oh, well, I see what's happened. I see exactly what's happened. That happened, and then that happened, and then Corona, and then that happened, and here you are now with this list of things going on. So this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to handle it. And this person went, oh, is that it? And I went, that's it in a nutshell. You haven't yet learned how to manage these life events, even at your young age, because it was a fairly young age. You haven't learned that yet. But
and you've sorry to interrupt. Do you find that, for instance, offering that greater fluidity, sort of going into a therapist in the same way as you might walk into a dentist, there's that kind of almost a nonchalance about it. It's just sort of an everyday activity. Do you find that fluidity helps fasten and sort of make easy the process of working through things for people who?
I hope so. I hope so. I think I present myself. I'm really aware, this interview's switched.
No, I'm curious.
We can go with that. I'm a psychotherapist. You don't get past me that quickly. But I'm going to go with the question because I like it. I think I present myself in a way not a lot of therapists do. I do masses and masses of social media, masses of videos, masses of lives. I do a lot of stuff, and I do that because I want to break down the stigma. And I've done a lot of videos over the past because I want people to see who I am, and I want them to hear my voice and see how I'm animated, and get some of my values as well when I'm talking about values or different things in life, because I want to break it down. There's this very staged image of a therapist in Twinset and Pearls that sits and say, tell me how you're feeling, and how does that feel? And I do say that. I do ask people how they feel because I have to, but it's not done in quite the same way. I want it to be more relaxed. I'm desperately wanting to break down some of the barriers of going into therapy.
Absolutely.
Just so many barriers. It's crazy.
Well, yeah, that plays exactly into what we were talking earlier about sort of staff and students, and that kind of, it feels so kind of robotic and mechanic in a sense that it's not like we're treating each other as human beings.
Yeah.
It's, the person who's got the problems they're one sort of kind of human being, and the person who's interrogating them almost is like it just doesn't feel personal. It doesn't feel as personal as it could be potentially. And I think your way of doing things is a nice way of breaking that, tackling that.
I remember, how long ago was it? A couple of years ago, that me and your uncle went into therapy, and I remember telling one of my sisters, and my sister went, "Oh my goodness!" And I'm aware as I say this that potentially the whole family will hear this podcast. The whole family will want to hear it. So as I'm saying this, I can feel the whole family go, "Oh my God, Les and Kev were in therapy." Let me just clarify. We went into therapy because it's good to be in therapy, and it's good to grow and learn. And there was some blips in the relationship. There was points of miscommunication that were happening. And we decided between us that we would step into therapy and sort them out. But we weren't by any means broken or ready to separate or anything like that. We just had some blips. But straight away, my sister went, "Oh my goodness, what's the matter? Are you okay? Is everything going to be all right?" Oh my, I not like I just said I was going to die. And I was like, "Sis, I just said we're in therapy."
Yeah. Exactly.
And anyway, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
We potentially will stay together. Do you know what I mean? Because we're working through something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you see it a lot in films and things, but sort of working through those things helps to prevent the internalization of divisions. I think having someone to mediate that to help you break them down without the help of a therapist or a counselor or a third party in that sense, often you don't know how to work through them. And I suppose then you internalize them, you don't tackle them, and they just get worse and worse. So actually it should be, I guess in that way, it's even worse if you don't go and see a counselor, if you just allow it to build up and up.
If we were to use the kind of tooth or the dentist analogy again, if we had a pain in one of our teeth, then if we ignored it, what would be the consequence of that? The consequence would be that it would probably just fall out eventually. And that's what happens with us as humans individually, or as us as humans as in relationships. If we don't start picking up little points of pain and then processing them and going, "What's going on here? Why is this happening?" And then going to get some professional help, and then working through it. Because if we do that with our tooth at the beginning of a point of pain, then chances are the dentist can repair it.
Well, I think that also adds as an interesting idea, which is that sort of when do you get to the point where you feel the pain warrants a visit to the dentist? Because I think a lot of people will allow things to reach sort of boiling point before they go and talk to someone or open up. And to use your analogy, which I think is a good one, sort of if you have a toothache and then that leads to tonsillitis, and then you get, well, there's no good in that. You could prevent it from getting to that point by opening up before that. And I think potentially that's something that needs to be encouraged more. When you feel sort of these naggles rather than these sort of sharp pains, these naggles and these ticks, then potentially that's when you should start to consider reaching out and opening up a lot more. And I think that's potentially a direction which is a good one.
Well, it's a good piece of marketing. I always think that the marketing around therapeutic intervention is just poor. We haven't yet got it right. I want to be able to say to people, me and my partner in therapy, and people go, "Oh, that's really good. I'm really pleased you're in therapy, and that's brilliant. Are you working through stuff? That's great." Instead of, "Oh my goodness, what's wrong?"
Yeah.
Or it happens individually as well. People will go, "Oh yeah, I've gone to therapy." Like, "Oh dear, are you okay?"
Yeah.
And it's like not the right attitude. I want people to go, "Yeah, I'm in therapy because I want to work through some stuff."
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the negative stigma of it all. At the end of the day.
I have one last question for you. In terms of young people, what do you think? This is a difficult question, but I think you'll get it. What do you think young people need to help break down some of those barriers?
I think it's an interesting question because everyone needs different answers, and everyone has problems or everyone has a different ravine which requires a different length bridge. That's not a very good analogy, but it's sort of the idea that I'll break down barriers in a way that someone else might not be able to, and they'll need something else. Like going right back to the beginning, my deep breathing exercises, I think, are really helpful to me, but other people require more than that.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about embracing new ideas, and I think that's always made easier among young people when you communicate, when you don't feel shy, or when you don't feel like you have to pretend to be something else to fit in. Because I think that prevents you from being yourself, and in turn preventing you from asking those questions which are very personal to you, because that's going to sort of change their entire vision of who you are and this facade that you've built up. So I think ultimately communication between young people who are in very different and very similar situations, communicating, understanding one another, introducing each other to new ideas and new resources. Go and see this person, they really helped me out. I think that's really important, because then that allows for a kind of a trial and error where people can go, well, they've recommended that, I'm going to give both of them a go, and A proved more successful than B, but A is where that's the direction I'm going to go. So I think ultimately it's all about sharing and caring, and that's those are my recommendations for someone who is wholly unqualified to recommend anything.
Why do you say that you're wholly unqualified?
Because it goes back to the idea of, well, inside everyone's head, everything is different, and my own experience, I think, can help a lot of people, but potentially I don't have I guess this builds into the whole problem. I don't think I have enough experience to help people, but I'll only really come to appreciate that that's wrong when I start communicating with people, and when I start sharing my own experience with other people and realizing that, well, hold on a minute, what I've experienced, well, potentially that can help you in that way. So I think that potentially lends itself to what I was saying earlier.
I would say firstly that you have your own experience. You've learned your own ways of managing your own stresses and worries over your studies and other things. And I would say that you have masses of experience to share with other people. And see, straight away there, we have a little bit of a barrier, because you go, well, I have no experience, and I go, oh my God, Alex, you have loads of experience, and you have loads of experience to share with other people. So don't downplay your experience, share it with other people, because it's really valuable. And that's exactly why we're recording this podcast now, because you do have experience.
This is it. We're tackling these issues. It's good.
As you were talking there, and I was aware the question was a bit difficult. I was kind of breaking down everything you said, and it's communication and talking. It's about having conversations, isn't it? It's just about having conversations, speaking to people, and not speaking about mind matters, let's say, in a way that is it has that shock factor to it. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm really stressed, or I'm really anxious, or I'm just having that conversation. One of the easiest ways to half an issue, as we know, is by talking about it with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quickest. So don't downplay yourself. You have masses of experience.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll try not to.
And also, I want to say that your level of engagement around the subject is far beyond what I might expect. And forgive me for having expectations on a 19-year-old. I mean, you have a lot of experience there.
Well, thank you. I think ultimately it's the idea of going back to your point on whether you are qualified to offer advice. I think everyone in every walk of life has experiences which lend themselves to understanding mental health. And a lot of people don't like to give it any thought because they think it's a distraction. And so they never articulate those ideas. And so coming on this podcast has been a fantastic opportunity for me personally to articulate those words that potentially were rolling around in my head, but I'd never really given them any thought.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You would be a great voice for the university. You have so many ideas there and so many and such a deep understanding of what's currently missing. And it's a shame that as an adult I'm saying that to you in the middle of your studies, but you really would be a great voice for all of the other students there above you and those coming through.
Thank you.
The other shame is that you have your own studies to do and you have your own achievements to achieve. So there's just not always the time to be getting sidelined with mental health.
Well, maybe if I've got a spare Monday, I'll give it a
go. Just let somebody hear you. I do have one last question. What's the JCR?
The Junior Common Room. So it's where all the students hang out, and it's also our kind of our student body, run by students for the students in that kind of sense.
You know, in the I can't remember what the acronym was. In the JCR room, what? No, it's not a JCR room. That's a double. In that room, would there be people in there that would be trained to kind of be around and just listen to people?
Yeah, I mean, we have, so again, it's all student run, student organized. So the student JCR a few years ago decided to create certain roles which help with that. So some students during their second or third year or first year even, will take on the title of sort of student helper. Right. We have male and female representatives and people dealing with sort of trans, and essentially it's all based around students being there to allow other students to talk to them. Yeah. So yes, we do have.
Okay. Good. I like that. Alex, thank you.
Thank you ever so much. It's been a privilege.
No, it's been an honour having you on. It's really nice to speak to somebody so young but with so much intellect around a subject that obviously I'm really passionate about. But to hear you talk in the way that you've spoken during the last 45 minutes, however long it's been, it's heartwarming to hear that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I hope my insights have potentially opened up some new areas of thought, or just shared experience, helping people to tap into those issues. Yeah. But I think you're doing a fantastic job with this. I think you're going in a direction which, unfortunately, people in my university aren't. So I think they can probably take a page out of your book. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you for having me.
I have one last question. Again, this is the
There we go.
This is definitely the last one. So I always end in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one thing, and I have to say, I normally warn my guests that I'm going to ask this. Is there one thing that you would like people to take away? What would be your takeaway from your learning, your experience, this podcast? What is the one thing? If you only take that one thing away, what would it be?
Talk to people. Open up. Appreciate that. Sorry, my dad's just outside. Talk to people. Open up. Appreciate that everyone's got their own piece to say. Everyone's got their own experience, and by doing that, that's the best way to help one another, and to break those barriers.
I love that. It's brilliant. Share. We must share more. So that's brilliant. What a great way to end. Thank you. Is your dad in the garden?
He is. He's actually putting the washing on the line.
Oh, there we go. What did I?
Yeah.
For those of you listening, that's an entirely different story. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for listening to another version of Invincible You. I really hope that you take something away from that. For me, student life is far too stressful and far too undervalued. We need to do more for young people and their student time. Thank you again to Home Radio, who produced these podcasts for us. Don't forget you can access Home Radio on our website, which is homeradio.co.uk. 2 apps, iOS and an Android app, and you can enable your Alexa. Just shout, Alexa, enable Home Radio. They do some brilliant playlists, so go across and listen to them. I'll be back next week with another recording. If we're not covering subjects you want us to cover, then please give us a shout and let us know what you want us to cover. For me, these podcasts are all about personal growth and kind of helping each other out a little bit. So that's it. I'm going to go. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you.
Be kind to yourself and be kind to everybody around you. Take care, everybody.